Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Today we got one of the most consequential announcements in this country in the last decade. I speak, of course, of the census results. One of the most important undertakings we do in this country, make sure every single American's counted so we know the total population. And then we use that data to make all sorts of big decisions based on the results, from budgetary decisions to representational ones. For instance, the number of congressional representatives a state might have in Congress goes up or down, depending on a change in its population. So this year, 6 states, Florida, Colorado, Montana, North Carolina, and Oregon, all gained 1 seat in the House. That means they gained population. Texas picks up 2. And 7 states, California, Illinois, Michigan, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, will lose 1 seat. 7 states, California, Illinois, Michigan, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, will lose 1 seat. Now, just to get a sense of how much this count matters, right? We've covered on this show some of the litigation about the census and whether they could ask a question about citizenship. And the whole time, the people on this show said, look, these numbers really matter. They're the kind of the fulcrum for political power in this country. Listen to this, all right? New York, the state of New York. If the state had counted just 89 more people, they would have kept an entire congressional seat, and Minnesota would have lost 1 instead. Those small numbers matter. Now, 10 years ago, of course, that would be 2010, 2011, last time we had a census, the Republican Tea Party wave meant they controlled a lot of state legislatures, and they used that power to gerrymander both their state legislatures and their congressional seats to lock in majorities that were in some ways kind of, voter-proof, right? And indeed, that has proven to be the key strategy for what has increasingly become the guiding ideology of the Republican Party, particularly post-Trump, which is use your power to retain power, even if it means building a barricade against how the voters feel about what you're up to. Look what's happening in 2 states right now, Texas and Arizona, specifically in 2 large urban counties, all right? Maricopa County, that includes Phoenix, the most populous city in Arizona, and then Harris County, which includes Houston, also the most populous city in Texas. Those counties used to be Republican strongholds not that long ago, but both counties have recently trended towards the Democrats for a bunch of reasons, not the least of which is the Republican Party has managed to alienate a lot of voters. So in the last election, Donald Trump lost in both those counties. In Arizona's Maricopa County, that margin proved to be the difference. Joe Biden won the county by 45,000 votes and only won the state by 10,000. So obviously that Maricopa performance helped him a ton to win the state. Now in Texas's Harris County, Barack Obama won by less than 1,000 votes in 2012, right? So you've got basically a county that's a 50-50 even split. And then 4 years later, Hillary Clinton wins the county by 162,000 votes. And then 4 years after that, Joe Biden won by more than 217,000 in November. That's not a great set of numbers, right, for the Republicans in Harris County. Things are obviously not going in the right direction if you're a Republican in Harris County. So what are they doing about it? Well, they could do some soul searching, right, to find out how did we lose Maricopa? How did we lose Harris County? These used to be strongholds. How have we fallen out of touch with these voters? No, they're not doing that. Instead, they're trying to find out how best to sabotage the votes of the people in those large metro areas. A few months ago, we brought you the story of the incredible things that Harris County judge, that's the chief executive for the county, Lena Hidalgo, was doing for voter access in her county, in Harris County. Things like 24-hour voting, remember? We had pictures of that. Drive-through voting, right, in the midst of COVID. And it worked, all right? Turnout in the county of Harris County was huge. And here's the other thing. It was huge. Democrats won that county, but Republicans still won Texas. They turned out across the state. So, okay, more people voted. Great. All good all around, right? No, not all good all around. Republicans are now specifically targeting the cities of Texas with new restrictive voting legislation, quote, seeking to roll back virtually every expansion the county put in place for 2020. The bills, these are the ones Republicans are proposing, would make Texas one of the hardest states in the country to cast a ballot in. The idea here is we are not going to let the people of Harris County use their votes to take away the preference of the real Texans of the rural counties. And Texas is not alone. Republicans are pushing the exact same narrative in Arizona with the Maricopa County situation. Now, on Friday, we told you about this utterly deranged and unnecessary audit they are doing of the 2020 presidential election results. 2020 presidential elections, 5 months after the election, right? Republican state Senate subpoenaed it and turned it over to this private company. As far as we can tell, the whole thing is totally unprecedented. It is still going on. This is the live video of that continuing audit. Okay? It's basically been outsourced to a private entity that is run by people who openly tweet things like "Stop the Steal," and almost no one in the election forensic universe has heard of this company. Today, in fact, the contractor that's overseeing the recount requested a judge keep its counting methods a secret. His same company also wants the hearing closed to the media and the public. So basically no one will ever know how they reach whatever their final count is. Keep in mind, they're counting the actual ballots. They have possession of them, okay? The company that is doing this in Maricopa County also prompted the judge to recuse himself from the case by adding an attorney to its team who previously worked as the judge's intern. So now another judge is going to have to step in. It wasn't clear immediately whether Monday's hearing would be held as scheduled. The court website showed no hearing on the calendar. So keep in mind, right? They're doing the count. Someone wants to get them to stop. They have now managed to postpone any judge weighing in on whether they should stop for an undetermined period of time as they keep doing this. And they say their counting methods and everything is proprietary. They can't tell us about it. And they are using this. They're doing this right now with the actual ballots, essentially using this bogus recount to, we think, ultimately advance the narrative that, oh, it was the corrupt city folk from Phoenix and Maricopa County. They oversaw a corrupt election and stole it from the good, righteous Trump people in the rural counties of Arizona. Trump was banging this drum throughout the election, right, about bad things happening in Philadelphia and in Detroit, yada, yada, yada. Because the recount, the audit that's happening in Arizona, they're not auditing all of the results, just Maricopa County, right? So this is the way the Republicans increasingly deal with an underlying structural fact of American politics, which is polarization between big urban metro areas, including the suburbs, and rural ones. So Republicans are dealing with this by essentially trying to depress the vote, make it harder to vote, or just outright undermine the integrity of it, people's perception of whether it's real or not in the metro areas. Think about if the shoe were on the other foot. Right? Think about how sort of insidious and gross this is that they're doing this, because the same dynamics of Democrats concentrated in metro areas and Republicans in rural areas, that's true in every state in the union, right? And it could be the case that Democratic governors and legislators start trying to find ways to, I don't know, mess with voting in rural counties. I'm sure if you put your mind to it, you could come up with some voting changes in rural counties that would make it harder to cast ballots there, but that's not happening, right? That would be wrong and gross and anti-democratic, and we'd criticize it on the show as well. But there's a total asymmetry here in how Republicans think about power in this country, about small d democracy. Now, as egregious and dangerous as this phony recount is and these restrictive bills we're seeing across the country from Georgia to Texas to Iowa, the thing to keep your eyes on, this returns us to where we began this evening, the real nuclear weapon state legislators have to overcome voter preference is gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is the process of carving up political districts. It's been done in politically advantageous ways as long as people have been doing it. But partisan gerrymandering is the method of manipulating the boundaries of a congressional district for just pure partisan advantage. Here's an example. Look at Wisconsin, right? Quintessential 50-50 swing state, right? Every 2 years, it's like, what's going to happen there? The Republicans have manipulated the state's House districts to the point where in last year's state Senate races, right, 40% of the Wisconsinites that voted that day, that showed up in that election, voted for Democrats, while just 38% of the seats went to Democrats. I mean, Democrats have prevailed in every statewide election since 2018. For governor and lieutenant governor, they have an attorney general, a state treasurer, a secretary of state, a U.S. senator, president. But Democrats are outnumbered by an almost 2-to-1 margin in the state legislature, largely due to the way Republicans drew those districts back in 2011. That is what we're watching for as these states now take the census data and begin the process they do once every 10 years of redrawing those districts again.